Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the ultimate American success story, a poor young man named James Gatz completely reinventing himself into a millionaire, only to meet a truly tragic, lonely end. We're going to be looking closely at F. Scott Fitzgerald's 1925 masterpiece, The Great Gatsby. But we're not just treating it as a classic piece of literature today. Instead, we're looking at it as an architectural blueprint of a doomed ambition. We're literally going to conduct an autopsy of a dream to figure out exactly why Gatsby's grand vision failed so spectacularly. I mean, think about the sheer scale of what this guy achieved. He started with absolutely nothing. Fast forward, and he's hosting these enormous, lavish parties where thousands of people are drinking his champagne, dancing in his mansion, and gossiping about his mysterious past. Literally everyone knew his name, or, well, at least the name he chose for himself. And yet, the whole thing ends with his murder and a funeral that almost nobody bothers to attend, which brings us directly to our central paradox. He spent years building this completely different life, acquiring this massive, shadowy fortune, all in the desperate hope that a woman named Daisy Buchanan would eventually just wander into one of his parties. He didn't build this empire for power or comfort or even fame. He built the whole shebang as this incredibly elaborate trap just to recapture the past. Okay, so let's reverse engineer the exact flaws that doomed Gatsby right from the start. We're going to break this down into 5 key phases today. The man who had everything, building the perfect illusion, the unbreakable class divide, the problem with time, and finally, when the dream dies. Starting right off with phase 1, the man who had everything, and the invention of an identity. Now consider the stark contrast between his reality and his invention. The man everyone knows as Jay Gatsby, he didn't really exist. He was actually born James Gatz, the son of poor farmers in North Dakota. He believed so deeply in the American dream that he literally erased his own history. He didn't just buy new clothes or get a better job, he reinvented his entire being from scratch. He created this mysterious millionaire persona who seemingly had it all. But honestly, this total reinvention was his very first fatal flaw. He actually believed that if you want to become someone else badly enough, you can just magically become that person. Which leads us right into phase 2, building the perfect illusion and chasing a memory. Because the foundation of his new life wasn't made of concrete, it was made of memories. Look at the massive gap on this timeline between his youthful romance and his obsessive wait. So in 1917, as a young, broke soldier, he meets and falls for Daisy. But he goes off to war, and in 1919, she marries the physically imposing and just enormously wealthy Tom Buchanan. Fast forward to 1922, which is when our narrator, Nick Carraway, moves next door. Gatsby has bought this colossal mansion directly across the bay from Daisy. Think about that. He spent 5 years waiting, creating this enormous present entirely built around a 5-year-old memory. And this brilliantly illustrates Gatsby's incredibly flawed logic. Step 1, acquire immense wealth. Step 2, buy a massive mansion to show off that wealth. Step 3, use the mansion and the crazy parties to win Daisy back. And step 4, the literally impossible step, erase the past 5 years entirely. He actually equated financial success with the magical power to rewrite history. He thought money was a time machine. But here is where the illusion gets super fragile. He wasn't just in love with the real, breathing, flawed woman named Daisy anymore. Over those 5 years, he had completely transformed her in his mind into this impossible ideal. For him, she represented wealth, beauty, high social status, the absolute perfection of the past, and an idealized future. We've all idealized someone at some point, right? But Gatsby took it to a fatal extreme. He fell in love with the idea of Daisy that he constructed in his own imagination. And obviously, no real human being can ever live up to an illusion that perfect. Let's move to phase 3, the unbreakable class divide, and the boundaries money simply cannot buy. Gatsby thought money was the universal key to Daisy's world. He was dead wrong. The crucial social divide here is between East Egg and West Egg. East Egg is old money, families with established, inherited wealth. That's Tom and Daisy. West Egg, where Gatsby and Nick live, is all new money. Gatsby might have had more cash than anyone else, but his wealth was brand new and, let's be honest, highly suspicious, tied to organized crime figures like Meyer Wolfsheim. So his new money could never truly buy him access into the protected, aristocratic world of East Egg. Tom Buchanan's sheer arrogance toward Gatsby proves that. In this society, all the wealth in the world doesn't just magically erase class boundaries. And of course, we absolutely cannot ignore what lies right between these glittering wealthy communities and New York City. the Valley of Ashes. This is where George and Myrtle Wilson live. It represents the poverty, the total exhaustion, and the immense human cost hidden beneath the roaring consumerism of the 1920s. The elite classes essentially cause destruction and then just retreat back into their money, leaving those in the Valley of Ashes to suffer the devastating consequences of their carelessness. Which brings us to Phase 4, the problem with time and rewinding the clock. We've seen the fake identity and the class barriers, but the deepest, most fatal flaw in Gatsby's design was his total misunderstanding of time itself. This has got to be the most telling moment in the entire story. When Nick gently reminds Gatsby that, you can't repeat the past, Gatsby is genuinely shocked. Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can, he says. This outright refusal to accept reality is the defining reason his dream failed. He wasn't trying to build a new future with Daisy. He stubbornly insisted on completely rewinding the clock to make it as if Tom Buchanan had never even existed. And finally, Phase 5, when the dream dies and reality violently collides with illusion, the pressure cooker finally bursts. It all comes to a head on this suffocatingly hot day at the Plaza Hotel in New York. In one corner, you have Gatsby desperately clinging to his strict illusion. He demands that Daisy say she never, ever loved Tom, and he tries to project this image of legitimate wealth. But inevitably, reality pushes back hard. Daisy struggles, and she finally breaks, admitting she actually did love Tom at one point. Boom. In that instant, Gatsby's fantasy of erasing history is completely shattered. And to make matters even worse, Tom ruthlessly exposes Gatsby's criminal ties, collapsing the entire carefully constructed identity of Jay Gatsby right then and there. In the devastating aftermath of that hotel confrontation, real tragedy strikes. On the drive back, Gatsby's yellow car hits and kills Myrtle Wilson, who ran into the road thinking Tom was driving. But Tom wasn't driving, and actually, neither was Gatsby. Daisy was behind the wheel. Yet, Gatsby still sacrifices reality for his dream. He chooses to take the blame for Daisy. Even as his entire fantasy is crumbling into pieces, he stands outside her house, waiting in the dark to protect her, totally blind to the fact that she has already retreated back into her safe, careless world with Tom. The final collapse is just swift and absolute. George Wilson, who was manipulated by Tom into thinking Gatsby killed his wife, finds Gatsby in his swimming pool and shoots him before turning the gun on himself. But here is the ultimate cruel irony. Daisy just disappears with Tom. No forwarding address, nothing. And out of the hundreds and thousands of people who eagerly drank his champagne and partied in his house, almost nobody attends his funeral. The man who seemed to be the center of the universe died completely alone. And that leaves us with the most enduring image of the whole story, the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. Gatsby spent countless nights just staring across the bay at it. Yes, it represented Daisy, but it was also this massive symbol of hope, of burning ambition, of the American dream itself. It's that unreachable ideal that always seems like it's just almost within your grasp, but always stays a little out of reach. He died reaching for that light, representing the beautiful, impossible future we all continually chase, even while we're inevitably pulled backward by our past. Which leaves us with one final haunting question to take away from this explainer today. What happens when the dream of becoming someone becomes more important than reality itself? Gatsby's incredible capacity to hope was absolutely his greatest strength, but his total inability to distinguish between that hope and reality, that was his fatal flaw. He proved that literally no amount of money can buy you a new past. Keep reaching for your own green lights, for sure. But remember to keep your feet firmly planted in reality,